Let's get right to the closing bell on Wall Street. Stocks rising today after the Supreme Court struck down President Trump's sweeping global tariffs. All three major indexes closing in the green. That's a live look right there at the Dow, which is slightly up to end the week. And as we mentioned, the big story right now, just hours ago, President Trump slammed the Supreme Court's decision invalidating most of his tariffs. The president responding to the news, saying that he is imposing an additional 10% global tariff across the board, effective immediately under Section 122. He called the 6-3 court decision deeply disappointing. ABC News' Christian Cordero has the latest.
Today, a visibly frustrated President Trump called the Supreme Court's decision a disgrace. The 6-3 majority opinion strikes down most of his sweeping tariffs against dozens of trading partners.
How ridiculous is that? I'm allowed to embargo them. I'm allowed to tell them you can't do business in the United States anymore. We want you out of here. But if I want to charge them $10, I can't do that.
Chief Justice John Roberts wrote in the majority opinion that the president does not have the authority to impose tariffs without approval from Congress. Justice Brett Kavanaugh was the only one of the three Trump handpicked for the court to side with him, writing that he disagrees with the court's opinion, but adding he believes Trump may find another way to impose tariffs. Trump today announced his plan to do just that through a different statute.
Today, I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122, over and above our normal tariffs already being charged.
The majority opinion considers Trump's tariffs a tax which only Congress controls. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer responding.
Today's SCOTUS decision was a win for the wallets of every American consumer that carried the burden of Trump's stupid trade war, and now he's doing it all over again.
The Yale Budget Lab estimates Trump's tariffs cost the average U.S. household more than $1,600 a year. The revenue the government collected topped $142 billion last year. It's unclear if the government will now have to pay that back. Alex?
All right, Christian Cordero for us. Thank you. And for more on what's next, I want to bring in the U.S. economic editor at The Economist, Archie Hall. Archie, thank you so much for your time. And I want to get to something that you wrote earlier today. You said, rarely does so totemic a presidential policy receive so resounding a smackdown. Obviously, a lot of big questions here, but I think the first one is, how are the markets reacting to the news?
Thank you. It's quite a smackdown. What's really striking is the markets are mostly pretty nonplussed. We saw a little bit of a rise in the bond yields when the news happened, not much one, a little bit of a decline in the dollar, but mostly the markets are looking through this and seeing that the president says he wants to raise tariffs through other mechanisms, that he'll probably be able to do so. And that so although this was a huge political story and it will be a huge source of mess and uncertainty for business going ahead, the ultimate economic impacts may not be that big.
Okay. Well, and Archie, we're talking about $142 billion in tariffs that have now been deemed illegal and must be refunded, according to the Yale Business Lab. But you've got companies from Costco to mom and pop shops now lining up for refunds. And it feels like that this could get pretty messy here.
It very much could. And the president did quite wryly note in his press conference that the Supreme Court issued this huge and really sweeping decision and mostly left open exactly that question of what happens with the tariffs, the well north of $100 billion collected under these, in principle, ought to go back to people who paid them. That's mostly companies and businesses, not actual Americans. That could be a problem as well. But exactly how that's done, whether that's done in a smooth and straightforward way, and lots of folks have said there should be a way for this to be done automatically, or whether it involves a huge amount of paperwork and mess and fuss by those companies, the government tries to make it as hard as possible so they can cling on to those tariff revenues. That remains to be seen.
Well, and something else, Archie, we heard the president say that he has a backup plan, essentially, a 10% global tariff on all countries under Section 122. We also heard from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent that between that and Section 232 and Section 301, he's predicting that virtually the tariff revenue for 2026 will remain unchanged. But is this something that could also be challenged? We know that especially 122, can only last for about 150 days without congressional approval here.
Exactly. As you say, Section 122 is at best a backstop. That's something that the president can use for now, and he has in order to work out what he's going to do next, in order to kind of get going on those other tariff actions he needs. But that's not a long-term solution. It does only last for 150 days. And even that, the legal authorities, is a little bit dicey. It's not really been used before. It requires to proving kind of big balance of payments difficulties, which is this sort of slightly 1970s language from when the law came in, and the tests there aren't very secure. More solid are the other authorities you mentioned, those 232 and 301. Those require investigations to be done by the government into particular countries or particular sectors where they see trade issues, which the president mentioned that he's kicked off. But that's a process that takes a while, and they're a lot clunkier and more difficult to apply in the kind of very forensic way the president has with these IEEPA tariffs, where anytime some country crosses him or does something he doesn't like, he's able to threaten tariffs. These new authorities that he's used a little bit before on things like steel and aluminium tariffs are going to be much harder to apply in those ways.
Okay. Archie Hallforce, thank you so much.
Thank you.